So welcome. So nice to see you guys. Thanks for taking the time to stop by this information session. My name is Okena Egwu. I'm a counseling professor in the counseling and special education department. I've taught this chemical dependency course a number of times in the past. It's a very cool course, very interesting, and I think working with Scott, we've got a wonderful opportunity here to offer the course as part of a study abroad program. So that's me. I'll turn it over to Scott.
Yeah, I'm Scott Ozorowski. I'm the Associate Director in the Study Abroad office, and I will be kind of the one helping behind the scenes on this program, helping organize with some of the logistics and the application process and help through any questions along the way for everybody who's looking at doing this program coming up in December.
I'm Brandon Washington, Academic Advisor for the Clinical Mental Health Program. I should know all of you, but if not, then we should meet.
This is a program that we ran one time before in 2019, and then COVID hit. So we kind of shut things down for a couple of years. The faculty member who had led the program then had left DePaul. So we're really excited that Okena is taking the mantle on and leading this program for a second time. And I'll let you take it away for the next bit, and then I'll come in with some slides at the end.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. Oh, and we just had somebody new that just joined us. So great. So.
Okay.
Hi, Natalie. Welcome. We were just getting started.
All right. So I'll just jump in. So this is us. We kind of introduce ourselves. There's also one other faculty member in the counseling department who will be co-leading the group or co-leading this program. Dr. Michelle. Some of you may have had classes with her, but she's actually out of the country right now, so she wasn't able to attend. But she will also be a part of this trip. She's done a number of study abroad programs in the class in the past, and it's been huge help in terms of planning and getting us situated. So one of the things I wanted to start with is just kind of giving a little bit of an overview of like what this program is, why are we doing it, what's the point. Some of that information's already gone out in the flyers and announcements and such, but just kind of to give you a little bit of perspective. The major portion of this course, obviously, is understanding chemical dependency, or what's referred to in a lot of other places as addictions, or in addictions counseling. So the course that we have in the DePaul sequencing for that is CSL 466, the assessment and treatment of chemical dependency. But we recognize that sometimes people want to participate in this program who've already taken that course. So we're also able to offer a special topics course for students to participate in the program if they've already taken 466. But essentially what the course is about, it's about exploring assessment, diagnosis, process addictions, and then the psychotherapeutic treatment approaches for these different disorders. So in that course, we talk about different models of counseling, or different models of addiction, different types of addiction. We talk about treatments and those kinds of things. So that's really what the foundation of the course is. That's kind of what our CAPE standards point us to exploring in that course. So that's the foundation. That's our starting point. Obviously, as we've talked about a little bit, Portugal has taken a very unique approach to addressing chemical dependency in the country as far as policy goes. So they've actually decriminalized all the use and possessions of small amounts of drugs in their country. And it's coming from the philosophy of, well, if people are using substances in a personal or recreational way, in a way that's maybe problematic, then we want to get those people the help they need rather than locking them up, exposing them to more, risk factors, traumas, et cetera. So in doing that, not only did they change policy, but they also created this Directorate for Intervention on Addictive Behaviors and Dependencies. And what they do is they go out and they focus on getting people the treatment they need rather than incarcerating them. So one of the major focuses, what we think is a valuable opportunity in this program, is to be able to learn what does that approach towards chemical dependency offer you if you're able to go out into those communities and really beef up your treatment centers and your treatment modalities. What is that able to offer you? What are you able to do? And we've in planning for this, we've been able to talk with some of the or we're scheduling for you guys to be able to talk with some of the people who've been involved in delivering treatment in these modalities. And I think that's going to be a really awesome opportunity. I think the other interesting thing that we try to focus on in this course, or I try to focus on when I teach this course, is how much of our understanding of chemical dependency comes from our own cultural perception, right? Most of us in this room, I'm assuming, coming from being Americans, we have a very unique way of understanding addictions. And a lot of people are even uncomfortable using that word. And that's why we use the phrase chemical dependency. And in the course, I talk a little bit about where that language comes from and what's the cultural implications of that. But for all of us, our understanding of drug use, all of us, our understanding of chemical dependency comes from a cultural background. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of a program like this is being able to explore how does a different cultural perspective impact our understanding of not just drugs, but people who use drugs and treatment of people who have difficulties with their drug use. So I think that's one of the major advantages of this program. We also want to kind of understand how the local history has shaped the Portuguese understanding of chemical dependency, what different paradigms or worldviews have come from their unique experience in this process. And then part of my own approach towards teaching is that one of the best ways to learn is by doing experiential and immersive learning opportunities. So that's kind of what we've gotten planned for people who are able to participate in this program. And I think that the benefits will be manifold. Some people have asked about this program. Are we doing this exact same thing as anybody else taking a section of this course? Anybody else taking 466? Are we going to be doing the exact same things? And the reality is, well, yes and no. So you're not going to miss anything by participating in this program, but you'll get a lot more in terms of that immersive and experiential learning opportunity. So I think that's one of the things I want to point out, and I can talk more about that if people have questions. I don't want to assume that everyone is super familiar with Western Europe, but so just real briefly, Portugal sits in the kind of the southwest corner of Europe, population of about 10 million, in an area about the size of Indiana. The capital is Lisbon, and that's where we'll be spending the majority of our time in the program. There are some trips that we got planned, but most of our time will be in Lisbon in partnership with a local university there. And then just a couple of things, I always like to check and see how the euro is doing, and it's been pretty comparable to the dollar for the last several years. So the euro is pretty good. Obviously, the main language there is Portuguese, but in the urban centers, we've been told that a lot of people do speak English or are able to communicate in English. And I think probably one of the most important things for me, or just a really awesome thing, is that I've just heard amazing things about the cuisine there. So I'm definitely looking forward to the food in Portugal. So that just kind of a brief introduction to the country itself. And then as a general overview of everything what the program's going to look like, and I believe Scott's going to talk here a little bit more, or I can talk a little bit more, whichever, in detail about what the schedule is. But in general, this program is designed for DePaul graduate students, and that's because that's related to the nature of the course material that we're going to be engaging with. We wanted to make this available to graduate students who are obviously interested in counseling, but maybe people who are interested in other related fields. So if you have friends in social work programs at DePaul or psychology or the related fields, they'd be welcome to apply for this opportunity as well. So as far as the academic portion, and I'm so grateful that we have Brandon Washington here. He might be able to shed some more light or answer questions about the academic components to registering for courses and financial aid and those kinds of things. There's 2 sections that will be made available. One will be a fall section of that 466 course that we'd all be taking together, and then a section of 482, which is the special topics course. And you'd be taking those in the fall or in the winter intersession, and we could talk a little bit more about that later. And what we'll do is we'll meet twice in the evenings, probably on a Friday evening. We're still trying to finalize those dates to cover some of that course content, some of that course material that we wouldn't be talking about in the Portugal portion. And then we'd have one more meeting after we return. But after those 2 meetings, we'll go to Portugal for our 2 weeks, and there'll be presentations from Portuguese professionals, treatment professionals, policy professionals, kind of explaining to us their approach and how their experience with decriminalizing drug use. And it's been interesting because it's been over 20 years. So now there's some articles and research that are starting to come out about was this successful, this experiment in Portugal. So I'm really curious to see how they're responding to some of the analysis that's coming out of their experience. And then, as I mentioned, there are also some culturally immersive experiences like day trips. And then we'll have some educational immersive activities as well. There will be a classroom component where again, we'll have guest speakers coming in and to talking to us about chemical dependency in Portugal. And then some other additional work will integrate some of the other stuff from the course into our time being in Portugal. And then finally, there'll also be an overnight trip. I believe it's 2 nights that we'll be spending in Porto. And Scott's got a little map here so we can see where that is in location to the capital. And then, as I mentioned, after we return, we'll have one more meeting to debrief and kind of wrap up everything that we've talked about. So as I mentioned, Dr. Michelle and myself are kind of your point people for information, planning, questions, and when we're over there, we'll be your point people in case of emergency situations as well. Did you want to take this, Scott, or I can keep going?
Why don't you go
Okay.
through it? I'll jump in if there's anything to chat about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is kind of at a glance the 2 weeks that we've got planned out. So starting at December 2nd, where we recommend flights, I believe, but you guys are responsible. Students are responsible for coordinating their own travel. But this is the kind of the time frame that we anticipate or ask students to be there. And we try to plan a little bit of free time to get you acclimated, get you settled, get you into your hotel. And then we'll start off that Tuesday with a city tour in the afternoon, or I'm sorry, a site orientation in the morning and a city tour in the afternoon. So we can learn a little bit about the environment, hear a little bit of the history of the city and Portugal. And then we'll have class on Wednesday, and we'll have a guest speaker coming out to give us a little bit more of the Portuguese history. The next morning, we'll have a lecture from CICAD, which is that agency that was created to enhance treatment opportunities for people with chemical dependency. And we'll have a museum visit and workshop that evening. Then we'll have another, we've scheduled throughout here on the Wednesdays and Fridays, these opportunities for us to kind of cover some more of that course content in terms of well, maybe what are some of the things that we do in the US in terms of treating? Because even though this is a great opportunity to learn, most of you, if not all of us, will be practicing in the US. So we also want to know what are the common practices for treating chemical dependency in the US, right? And then, so then we've got a couple of other cultural activities, and those are the ones that are in blue as you look throughout here. And then that weekend, we'll have our visit to Porto. And there's no real academic activities planned for that first weekend. We want that to be a culturally immersive or engaging experience. And we try to plan some free time in there. And then also a group meal. So there's a couple of places in here that we want to be able to all sit down together and kind of be able to chat and discuss what information that we've been taking in and what sense we're making of it. I think having the opportunity to reflect on these learning experiences is just as important as learning experiences themselves. So there's a couple of places in here that we've identified spaces for us to sit down together and kind of dine and enjoy each other. And then
I'll jump in and say Porto
yeah.
is one of my favorite cities in the world. So it's a really cool weekend excursion that you get to spend a couple days in Porto. You're gonna love it.
I'm really excited about that. I'm looking forward to that. So then that Monday we'll come back and then we'll kind of give you a little bit more time to get adjusted and maybe rest up from the travel that weekend. We'll have another lecturer come in, talk to us about the biology of addiction. Like as I mentioned, there's several different models for understanding addiction. There's socio-cultural models, there's psychodynamic models, there are biological models, there's a variety. So this will be a really good opportunity for us to sit down and talk about some of those biological models or ways of understanding addiction on a neurological basis. And then this is something that is a really cool opportunity that the organizers really encourage us to participate in. And when we talk in the chemical dependency class, we talk about different approaches towards treating, and one of those approaches towards treating people with severe chemical dependency or chemical dependency to opioids is through methadone administration. And methadone is a replacement drug that sometimes people will take to help them step down off of hard drugs. And in Portugal, they actually have mobile centers that go around and distribute this methadone. And the organizers said that we would have an opportunity to be able to visit one of these mobile distribution centers. And they said that it's a very awesome opportunity in terms of giving students the ability to see and be kind of a part of that experience, to see what that world is like and see have a little bit more, I want to say contact, but proximity with people who are struggling with addiction. So that's a really cool opportunity. And then that evening, we'll have another cultural activity. More the next day, more classroom time for us to continue to follow that content. And then Scott, I'm not sure off the top of my head, the EMCDDA.
Yeah, it's the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. So
Thank
there's
you.
like a talk and a tour of that.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll have a talk and tour there. Thursday, another cultural experience. Visit to Evora, which is I believe it's a city like a little bit east of Lisbon. Is that right? Yeah. Where the Bone Chapel is, and you can look, this is something you can look up online. It's very cool. So we'll do that day, and so that'll be another one of our day trips. And then our last kind of academic related activity will be related to visiting this drug treatment center. Then we'll wrap up with one last dinner and is that pronounced Fido?
I think so.
Okay, a Fido show, and then our last day we'll leave that to you guys to spend if there's last things you guys want to check out in the city or souvenirs or those kinds of things. So that's kind of our general outline of what we got planned for you guys over the 2 weeks. And then I guess we'll take questions here in a minute if you have any questions about that. Oh, just a couple of other things before I turn it over to Scott. Just other things to pay attention to. U.S. citizens, if you have an American passport, you're able to travel to Portugal for up to 90 days without a visa. So sometimes students wonder about, do I need a visa to participate in this program? And technically, you don't. It's a tourism visa under the Schengen agreement. There's no vaccines required. As I mentioned earlier, students are responsible for booking their own airfare, and Scott will talk a little bit more about that in a second as we break down the costs. Students' accommodations will be double occupancy, so that's just something to keep in mind. And then, yes, this is obviously a big experience. There's a lot of different things that we're trying to do, and that's kind of built into the course, is that we want this to be a learning opportunity, but also an opportunity for you to enjoy yourself. So as far as the academic and cultural activities that we have planned, we do expect students to participate in all those opportunities. And then, as we're having this conversation, I think it's also important to just briefly mention that while possession and use of small amounts of illicit drugs has been legalized, there are still penalties. So this isn't the kind of trip where we'd encourage you to engage in substance use behavior if that's what you're accustomed to here in the US, because there are still penalties and fines and punishments that are associated with use. But overall, their approach has been shifted away from that. So that's just something just to kind of note. So we do expect you to follow the code of conduct. And then sometimes people can have concerns about safety when they're traveling abroad. Right now, the current advisory level is at its lowest level for Americans traveling to Portugal. So I also put the link to the US State Department, because I think that that's a really good resource in terms of learning more information about what's it like to travel to different countries. So if you go to the State Department website, you can select Portugal and find out lots of other information about what things you might expect. But for those of you who've ever traveled to Europe, or maybe those of you who've never traveled to Europe, it's generally very convenient in terms of expectations and conversions and those kinds of things. So.
All right, I'm going to talk about some of the logistical things here moving forward. So the application deadline for this program is May 1st. So I know we've got a mix of people here. Some of you have started your application already. Some of you have already submitted your application. Others have not. Please make sure to get that in before May 1st. The sooner the better. You just go to the Portugal Study Abroad program page on the DePaul website. There's an application questionnaire with a handful of questions. So it's nothing too hard, just some short answer questions. And then after the applications are submitted after May 1st, Okena and Professor Michelle as well are going to schedule some brief interviews with everybody who has applied. And when I say interview, it's more just kind of an informal get together, ask you some questions, give you a chance to ask specific questions, just to kind of get to know everybody who's applied. And then you will find out about being accepted in mid to late May, typically. If you apply by May 1st, you automatically do get considered for our study abroad scholarships. We do have some study abroad scholarship funding. That is determined basically by your financial need and by your GPA. So if you're someone who has a FAFSA on file and has a high financial need and also has a strong GPA, those are the most likely people that would be able to get some additional potential scholarship funding from our office to help offset the cost. There are also a lot of other scholarship details on our website for external scholarships that you can look into. But as long as you apply by May 1st, you will be considered for those DePaul scholarships automatically, the ones from our office. And again, mid to late May, you'll find out if you've been accepted to the program and if you did get a scholarship, how much that is. And then we will register you in the class. So we'll be in touch to register you in that class. The what is it? The 466 is it? Yeah, the CSL 466. And if you're someone who has taken the 466 already and you're going to do the special topics instead, we'll get you into that section. But you will just leave space in your fall schedule because we will actually get you registered in that class for you.
Oh, I just checked it. I don't believe anyone has taken 466 yet. So I don't think we'll have to use the 482. But if there is someone that has, let me know and we'll adjust.
Great. All right, next slide, Okena. And then just cost information. We are still finalizing the program fee. That's going to be finalized in the next few days. It's looking like it's going to be around $3,600. That covers all of your accommodations during the program, all your breakfasts, a couple of group lunches and dinners, every one of your course activities and your excursions, all of your transportation, including the whole weekend trip away to Porto. You'll also be enrolled in international travel and health and accident insurance. And then there's some study abroad administrative fees in there. The things that excludes, the biggest thing is just food and snacks outside of those meals. So you do have to be responsible for those other meals, but it's all a matter of how cheaply you wanna live while you're there. There's plenty of ways to eat very cheaply, or if you want to have some nice food, it's all up to you. And then your flights. You do have to book your own flights to and from Lisbon. Right now, the flights are actually quite affordable to Lisbon. I was checking the other day. I mean, you can get round trip flights for like $600 to Lisbon right now. So it's a pretty affordable place to go in terms of the places in the world. But yeah, that's like I said, we're going to finalize that program cost soon, but it's going to be somewhere right around there. That will be charged to your student account in the fall. So you have to pay for the 4 credits. So it is a class. So you're paying the tuition for that class. But again, that's a class that is going towards your degree. And then it's that program fee of around $3,600. And yeah, and that's sort of the basic overview of things. There's a lot of information on the Portugal webpage. If you've got questions about logistics or the application process or finances, you can contact me. If you've got questions about the course and the program itself, you can contact Okena. But yeah, we'll just sort of open it up now to any questions that folks might have. We're happy to answer them. And if you don't have any questions, it means we gave you everything you need. But yeah, throw something in the chat, unmute yourself, just, any questions. And we'll stick around too if people have an individual question that they'd rather just talk one-on-one about. But anything for the group that you're curious about how the classwork, how the travel works, logistical questions.
I guess I have a question. So I know we have to do we take the class in addition to this trip?
No, basically the trip is the class. So basically you're going to be enrolled in that 466 class in the fall, but instead of that class meeting twice a week for 10 weeks, it's going to meet a couple of times beforehand in the fall. So you won't have a commitment of meeting in class session throughout the fall like you would a normal class. You're going to have a couple class sessions probably on Friday evenings. And then you have an intense 2 weeks where in that 2 weeks, you're going to have a lot of the learning happening there through the lectures that he'll be giving, through the speakers, through all the visits you're making. And then there's probably going to be some final presentation or final paper, something that you turn in after you come back from Portugal. And you're going to have kind of a final class after that, final project or paper. There's going to be some other assignments along the way for your trip that maybe you can talk about that in terms of, I think you might have reflection. Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about how the assignments and class structure will work?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So yeah, the way that the class is structured, there's a couple of major assignments. One is an abstinence project, and we do that project before we even leave. And it's an opportunity for students to kind of forego something like sweets or coffee. A lot of people give up sugary drinks like soda. And so that's one of the major projects that we have students do. Here, let me just pull up the syllabus and I can talk through the other ones. Yeah, and then throughout that process, then there's a number of reflections that we ask you to submit as part of that. And then there's also another element of the course that we'll accomplish before we depart to Portugal, and that's a 12-step program visit. 12-step program is a very common way of addressing a lot of chemical dependency here in the US. So we do ask you to attend a 12-step program. And then at the end of the course, when we come back, we do a cultural presentation, right? So we identify a specific culture group and we identify their specific needs that are related to chemical dependency. And we talk about what are the best treatment interventions in terms of reaching that specific population. So those are the major assignments. And then there'll be little things that we'll do while we're over in Portugal. Like, it's kind of like short quizzes or short reflections that we'll do over there based on the information that we're getting while we're there. So that's kind of an overview of how the course will work.
So even though you're registered in the fall, the class won't officially be over until you're back from Portugal. You got your final presentation in, and you'll get a grade sometime in winter once kind of all of that is done. So the class sort of extends, even though it's registered in the fall. Yeah, Natalie.
Hi, okay, so my question is that, so the next quarter, if in my program or like the CMHC, you have to take 3 classes. So if we're only taking one, like during the whole fall semester, I was wondering if, can you
No,
take,
wait, hold on. In fall quarter, your fall of your second year, you take 2 classes,
Mhm.
466 and 461. So you are still going to enroll in both of those. And then in winter 2025, you'll have 3 classes.
Sorry, I get confused about the semester or quarter system, but that's what I meant. In the fall, we're going to take 2, but one of them is chemical dependency, like this class, but we're only meeting twice. So I'm thinking we're going to have like a lot of free time only taking 1 class ish, but there is like a lot of work you're saying during the fall.
So during the fall, yes. So to Scott's point, yes, instead of meeting 10 times throughout the fall quarter, you only meet twice, right? But when we're in Portugal, we'll meet many, many times, right?
Yeah.
And then when we come back, then there will still be that one more additional meeting. So in terms of planning, in free time, I can't speak to what's going to work out best for your schedule, but you will not have those normal 10 weekly meeting appointment times that you would have if you registered in any other section of 466. Right?
Okay.
I
So
will
maybe
say that
you'll probably have a lighter time schedule for most of the fall quarter, but that's balanced by the fact that you are going to be like 2 weeks in Portugal.
right. Okay, so maybe that's a better question for Brandon, that I can ask him later.
You can ask it now.
Okay, so there's 3 classes in the winter. Can we take one of those in the fall? That's my question.
No. Yeah. For the entire cohort, the classes are only offered in the quarter that they're offered in. So any winter you wouldn't be able to take early. The only possible thing you could do, so you're taking an elective, your second elective in spring year 2, and you could possibly move that up, but then that would leave you with 1 class in spring. So either way, you're kind of gonna, so you'll have a lighter fall load if you move so you'll have like 2.5 classes. You have the 466 that's going to go until December, the 461 that you're supposed to take. And let's assume you take your second elective, psychology 560. So that'll be fine. So you have those 3 classes in fall and then the original 3 classes in winter. But then when you get to spring 2025, instead of taking 483 and 482, which is the elective, you would have already taken your elective. So that could be one way you want to do it, but you're, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. Either way, you're going to have a light quarter. It's just if you want it to be spring or if you want it to be fall.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, and Scott, just for clarification. So if they're going to register for 2 classes and they'll be billed for the 2 classes, that's the original tuition. When do they pay the $4,000 for the
Yep, that's going to post on their student account at the same time. It'll be, you know, it'll go in, you'll get registered in the classwork in like June, and that'll appear on your account, and you'll pay it on the same schedule that you pay your fall tuition. So,
Okay.
any other questions?
Okay, sorry, I have two more, and I think one of them was already covered, but I just want to double check when we're like enrolling for our classes, and if we like do get accepted into this opportunity and program, would we enroll for both classes, or would we leave one, or you enroll us for the one course that's
Study abroad office, I will enroll you for the 466 class. So you enroll in your other fall class you normally take, but just don't enroll in 466. And there will be a special section of this. That's the study abroad only section with everyone doing that program. And I will put you into that, and I'll send you an email telling you you've now been registered, and then you'll see it appear in your account. And again, that'll happen in June sometime.
Okay, that makes sense.
One quick thing to that. So you guys are all going to enroll, let's just say May 20th. Now, if you're unsure about going to the program, if you're 50-50, my suggestion would be to enroll in both classes.
Yep, that's a great idea.
Enroll in the 466 so you can get the section you want. And then if you decide to do the Portugal, then you can drop that class and be enrolled in the 466. But I would suggest that everyone enroll in two for the fall, because you know they'll fill up anyway. So get your space and then wait for the Portugal, or at least if you're on the fence, then register. If you know you're going to this, then
that's a great suggestion, Brandon. That's great. And then when the time comes, you can just drop it and I'll enroll you in the other section, or I can just physically swap you. So if I see that you're already in the other 466 session and you've been accepted and you said you want to move forward, I'll just swap you into this one instead. So
yeah, but definitely get your classes beforehand, because you never know.
Yeah, good idea.
Anything could change.
Did you have a second question, Natalie?
Yes, and then my other question, so I know it goes till the 15th, and I understand that we meet again for the class. I wasn't sure because I was thinking like if I were to do it like maybe like I know some people might extend travel. I wasn't sure if that would even be an option if we do have to meet after, which is totally fine, and I would love that opportunity.
Yeah,
anyway.
no, I think your final meeting is it going to be in December, or is it going to be back in January after the holidays?
It'll be back in January after the holidays, after you would have been coming back for winter classes anyway. So, and again, those meetings will probably be on like a Friday evening to avoid conflicts with your other weekly courses.
Oh, gotcha. So it won't be like right when we get back. So it would be till the winter like break ends, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
he'll coordinate that with the group, and it'll just be one Friday, and when you can come together and you'll do your final presentations and such. But yeah, you can be able, if you want to stay and do some travel in Europe for the next week or week and a half, go for it. And you'll book your own flight. So do what you got to do.
Mhm.
That's what's nice about it, is that it does give you the ability to be able to travel afterwards too.
Portugal has great soccer teams, so I would suggest you guys try to catch a game.
It's true. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one last question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that if you're like 50-50, or like when is like the day you have to decide if you're gonna do it?
Yeah, good question. What's going to happen is you'll submit your application. We'll see if you're going to be accepted. We'll send you a notification that says, congratulations, you've been accepted. And then we usually give you a couple weeks to make your decision. So when you get that acceptance email, it's going to say in there, I'm just going to make up some dates right now. Say you find out on May 15th, we'll say, let us know by May 30th if you want to move forward or not. And then you'll let us know. There will be a place on the website where you click and say, yes, I'm going to move forward. Or if you decide not to, you just say, nope, decline the offer, and you're out, nothing. There's no fee or anything you had to pay. You just say, I decided not to. So once you do get accepted, we give you a couple of weeks to decide.
Okay. Second part to that question, can you have a little bit more time? Okay, the reason I'm asking this is because there's like I applied for like the graduate assistantships in the fall. So like if you get those, then you don't pay tuition. So like that would kind of depend on if I'm gonna be able to do this. And
Gotcha.
it's in June, you kind of interview.
Gotcha.
I guess you have
what's nice about you is that you get a little more flexibility doing a December program because of summer break. Once you click on the button and say, I am going to move forward, then our withdrawal policy does kick into play, which is basically if you withdraw at any point after that, depending on when you withdraw, there would be a penalty. However, if it's more than 90 days from the start of the program, you can withdraw with no penalty. So because summer's in the middle there, if you start to do the math, you're looking at basically, October, September. So basically you're going to have up until sometime in August where you could technically back out with no penalty. Our hope is that you don't at that point, but if something does come up, you don't have that freedom on some of our other programs because the summer break isn't in the middle there, but it does give you a little bit of a cushion. So if something did change over the summer, you would be able to withdraw with no penalty up through, like I said, like August.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Cassidy.
I wanted to ask why you like Porto so much. Like, what are the things that you love about it?
Oh, that's a great question. Porto is right on the river and it's the home, it's called Porto, it's the home of port wine. So have you ever heard of port wine? So there's all of these port wineries along the river. So it's just a really cool place to like visit port wineries. It's got a lot of cool stuff happening along the river and it's got a really old sort of vibe to it. Just old buildings, old architecture, just beautiful place. One of my best friends lives in Porto, and so she got married, and I went to her wedding, and I was going to stay in Porto a few days, and then travel around, and I just stayed in Porto for like a week and a half. So, but it's just a
Aw.
cool old city right by the river. Yeah, it's a really fun place for you to be going for the weekend. On
That's
top of that, you're going to
awesome.
be in Lisbon for a week and a half, which Lisbon's capital city, and tons of great things there as well.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Julia.
Yeah, I was just wondering how many people you guys are planning to accept, or like how many you brought on the last trip.
Yeah. On the last trip, I think we had around 14 or so, I think we had. So I'm anticipating maybe around that. I don't think there's not like a high number that we have to do a cutoff at. I think our goal is anybody who applies for the program and is qualified and doing it for the right reasons, we want to be able to accept into the program. But our hope is that we're going to be, maybe around 14, 15, maybe up to 20 students potentially for the size of the group.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. If anyone has a specific question, we'll hang around and answer those. If you haven't completed your application, please make sure get that in as soon as possible, and we'll go from there. So, okay, any last things you want to say?
No last thoughts. Thanks so much for taking time to join us, and hopefully we answered your questions. And if not, if something comes up anytime between now and May 1st, don't hesitate, shoot us an email. Scott, you said that you'll be making the recording. And
Yeah, I'm going to post a recording of this. So if you've got any friends that couldn't come, I know I had multiple people email me that couldn't make it today. We're going to post a recording page, so it'll be a couple of days. So let them know that they can check it out.
Cool. And last, I'll just remind you all, if you want to find your registration date for fall, which should be coming up in the 5th week of the term, you go to Campus Connect, then manage classes, then registration appointments, and then you hit fall, and they'll have those 2 dates there, like May 4th and May 20th at 3 o'clock. So that's how you can find out when you can register. So you can go ahead and register for 466 anyway, and then wait till your response from Scott. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a good
Thank you
weekend.
so
Good rest of the
much.
week.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah.